Wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Shout out to all the Amaru Khans out there. Hey, shout out to all the moderators in the house, all my longtime followers and supporters. I know you guys, I know the names. All right. And shout out to the Patreons and all the new members of the channel. Thanks for tuning in, hearing me read. Take the time out of your day to do that. I really appreciate that. I really get excited when you guys enjoy learning new things and just going through these old books and seeing what everybody has to say about ancient America. What's up? What's up? What's up, family? I see you guys in the chat. What's up? Glad to see a lot of you. You know, it's good to see faces, you know, that I've known, or names, you know, that I've known in the last, you know, 6, 5, 7 years, you know, still here. Appreciate you guys. Today we're gonna basically get into a book that we've been reading before a lot in different videos. Before I do that, let me just, of course, let's see what we got here. All right, so I just decided to create the playlist right away. So let me just refresh this. Okay, so now we got 3. So this is the book. We're about to get into Mysteries of Ancient South America. There's 2 previous videos where I read full chapters. In case you guys have missed those, the sign of the sun, world's oldest alphabet, Mysteries of Ancient South America, and then Signposts of the Atlanteans, petroglyphs, Mysteries of Ancient South America. Today we're gonna get into chapter 7 of the same book. This is the playlist, and this is the name in case you guys missed the first couple of parts. And in this book, it talks a lot about banderistas, as a lot it calls these colonists banderistas. A lot of people don't even know what that is. Bandeirantes is the proper term. Were settlers in Portuguese Brazil who participated in exploratory voyages during the early modern period to expand the colony's borders and subjugate indigenous Brazilians. They played a major role in expanding the colony to the modern-day borders of independent Brazil beyond the boundaries demarcated by the 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas. Bandeiritas also enslaved thousands of indigenous people, which ultimately played a major role in the genocide of indigenous peoples in Brazil. So, guys, remember what we've been reading the last couple of days about Sephardic Jews who was settling in Brazil. So, dodge the hijack with these whitewashed images here on the right. These are Swarty people. A lot of these were Sephardic Jews. We're going to see the familiar names mentioned. A lot of them, most of them started mixing with the indigenous population. They started calling them mulattoes and stuff. But they want you to think it was so-called white people mixing with a certain type of Native American. So it kind of throws you off a little bit. Says here, the city of Sao Paulo served as the home base for the most famous bandeirantes. Some bandeirantes were descended from Portuguese colonists who settled in Sao Paulo, but most were Mameluco, descent with both Portuguese and indigenous ancestry. This was due to miscegenation being normal in colonial Brazilian society, as well as polygamy. All right, and we find out they spoke what's called the Paulista General language. So they spoke both Portuguese and a Creole language, which is ancient Tupi, what they call Paulista General language. All right. You know, we're going to get into all this in future videos, more in depth. All right. So I just want to show you, let me just zoom into this. Don't think just white and black, or white and Africans. Right, you see who they're carrying? That's a swarthy man. And who are these Indians? Or other indentured servants from Europe. Let me see if we got a little bit on bandeiristas here. I think it does mention them. But I did see them here earlier. Oh, there we go, bandeirantes. The big landowners orchestrated the local political game, often consolidating their authority with armies of mercenaries, the bandeirantes, the bandeiristas, bandeirantes. All right. Though they originally aimed to subjugate and enslave indigenous peoples, the Bandeirantes later began to focus their expedition on finding gold, silver, and diamond deposits and establishing mines. So that's where we're going to get into today. All right. A lot of that story. So just wanted you guys to know who the Banderistas were, called Banderaites. A lot of them, again, swarthy people, so-called black folks that are doing this to the indigenous population, guys. This ain't personal. This ain't history is history. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing, okay? Or liking or disliking. All right, we good? I think we're good, right? Just some terms to know while we're reading. Again, there's the book Mysteries of Ancient South America by Harold T. Wilkins. This is from 1946. We're going to go to, again, chapter 7. Let's see. Okay, this is page 152. It says here the Atlantean subterraneans of the Incas, so-called Incas. There's a reason I put parentheses in the title, right? Because, you know, Incas are fairly new to the area. They're not ancient. So, yeah, they had stories of what they found, but they're not the people that a lot of times they're talking about in these ancient times of this area. Travelers both in Mexico and on the bleak and lonely paramos of the high Andes in Peru, and far down on the trail of the old conquistadores that led to Potosi and the Argentine, are pretty sure at some stage of their journey to meet, especially in the short twilight at those heights, a strange light called La Luz del Dinero, money light. All right, the money light. It is a phenomenon for which science and physics at this time has no explanation. Indeed, it is pretty safe to say that in Europe, no physicist has ever heard of this phenomenon. You meet it about the time of the pale, lambent dusk along the solitary tracks that lead across the Cordilleras and the bleak paramos from old Cusco, old City of David, huh? Jerusalem. Of course, the European or American traveler departing from that old city of sad and depressing memories is likely to be in the mood and frame of mind to be receptive of this marvel of the trail. And yet it is certainly not a subjective illusion, existing only in the mind of one who has just left a melancholy place of ghost, where the apparitions of ruffling Spanish hidalgos with fierce dark eyes and haughty saturnine countenances steal in the pale moonlight across the plaza and down shadowy streets with carved doorways, still emblazoned with heraldic beasts, rampant on Castilian coats of arms. Yet, despite all his mail and hauberks and his flaming matchlocks and Castilian and Extremaduran soldier, some of Sephardi's and Moorish people here, even with the cold-hearted, sadistic monk lurking in the background with his fiery faggots of the auto de fe, was never able to wrest from the gentle and solemn-eyed Incas the secrets of their lost caches. As you jog along the horseback or afoot along any of these old Spanish gold trails from the mines to the coast ports in old Peru or the old Spanish Argentine, you may meet at a turn of the cold and stony ways some Indian or mestizo half-caste or even a white man hunting for a buried gold. A man will swear to you that in Lone Canyon, just off the old Gold Way, he saw one evening, as the sun had sunk into his ocean bed, far away to the west behind the walls of the valiant Cordilleras yonder, and the stars wheeled up the deep blue sky, a strange whitish light or queer greenish luminosity appear hovering above the rocky ground. Esta la luz del dinero, señor, says he. It is the money light, and where the wavers of the trail why Carajo, there is a tapada, a treasure cache, un tesoro en tierra. The colonial Spanish trail from Potosí to Tucumán in the Argentine is pitted with holes showing where generations of seekers have dug for tapadas. Some of these tapadas may be caches of royalist or ecclesiastical gold and jewels made when the monarchist armies were retreating from before the advancing legions of Simón Bolívar, el Liberador. These mysterious lights often appear in the dusk or darkness, when they may trail greenish luminosity or a queer whitish shine. At other times, all right, you guys there? We got, okay. At other times, the lights may stand upright like shafts of the columns in an old Inca temple of the sun, or take the form of tropic trees. The tapada hunter drives a stake in the ground and retires to some resort of wine and warm and cheerful company, song and fandango, to await the coming of a broad day. There were demonios abroad, as everyone knows, in the night hours, and not for all the lost treasures of the Incas will your mestizo or your full-blooded Indian dig in the darkness for these treasures. His piquete serves the same purpose as a boil. To the salver of silver wrecks, none will brave the evil spirits of buried treasures and darkness in the high altiplanos of the Tierra Fria. To grub up his piquete and jump his claim. Si, señor, hasta mañana, when we will return and hunt for the gold where the money light has shone. I have heard some say that it is caused by the emanations of gases, such as is probably the cause of the mysterious faro de Catatumba in the Gulf of Maracaibo in the Venezuelan oil regions. Maybe, and maybe not. I have heard others compare the light to the jack-o'-lanterns or will-o'-the-wisp lights, which used to be frequent a century or less ago in the neighborhood of undrained English fens and marshes. An old blind and crippled gold-bug bitten friend of mine, who died a few years ago in his bed in a West of England infirmary, swore that the luz del dinero was a radioactive emanation from buried gold. Yes, but radioactivity is not usually associated with the breaking up of stable atoms, such as we find in gold. Better say that the mystery remains still unsolved. This old engineer friend of mine, who was the nephew of a former bishop of Bath and Wells, Somerset, England, spent many years of his adventurous life in the Argentine and Mexico. Said he to me, I owned a gold mine in South America, which I found by this small bluish white light coming from the ground. There I dug up a very rich piece of quartz ore. It was hardly an inch below the surface. I always found metal after digging where these lights were seen in the dusk. The peones and the Indios fear this apparition and give it a wide berth, where it is not for this fear of the supernatural. Many more treasures would have been discovered by its means. It always struck me, this luz del dinero, as resembling alcohol burning with blue tongues of flame. It can be seen for a long way, and the Indios and Spanish American greasers have sworn to me that the light extends over a radius equal to that of the subterranean metal cozonet. I once hired an old hacienda in Mexico, where an old Indian woman told me she'd seen this light. I searched walls and floor, but found nothing. Yet a man who took the place after I left found a tin of gold, doubloons, in the roof. Yet no mystic lambent flames of money light will ever suggest the location of the amazing lost cache of ransomed treasure of the last and murdered Inca emperor, Atahualpa, or Atahualpa, huh? A treasure which the Spanish chroniclers and historians say consisted of from 600 to 650 tons of gold and jewels, worth 384 millions gold pesos de oro. If we suppose conservatively that there were 600 tons of gold in this vast treasure, then taking the value of gold at the pre-Great War #2 rate of 7 pounds, a troy, 1/10 a troy ounce, and metal at raw gold value, leaving out in all account all antiquarian values, would have been worth in 1938 about 147 million pounds, or say $835 million. And yet, there is good reason to believe that, as an Inca nobleman told Benalcázar, the conquistador of Quito, even this immense treasure is but a kernel of corn compared with a heap from the harvest field in relation to another very ancient subterranean treasure, which I shall mention later in this chapter. So much gold, guys. I got a future video on this, on the importance and the abundance of gold in the Americas, from this whole region here all the way up to like Nicaragua. So full of gold. As Pedro Cieza de Leon virtually said in AD 1545, the backs and bottoms of the stoutest galleons of that age would have been broken transporting these immense heaps to the bar of Sanlúcar and the stone houses of the Casa de Contratación in Old Seville. Even had that mystery sprite of the sea, Davy Jones, consented under old Father Neptune to its passing overseas. The gente decente of old Spanish descent, who govern today the administrations in Lima and La Paz, would lend more aid than they do to the efforts of enterprising gringos from New York and London to find some of these immense Inca caches, were it not for fear of the vigilance of millions of Quichua Indians who still revere the memory of the murdered Inca emperor of the sun, and who would flame into revolt at the first brooding of such an enterprise. The downtrodden Indians who bear small resemblance to the picture of the Incas which one can see today in the old church of Santa Ana. Listen to that. These downtrodden Indians who bear small, they don't really look like the pictures of the Incas, which we can see today in the old church of Santa Ana. Hey, he's saying it. A little northward of melancholy Cusco, dream of the day when, led by their reincarnated ancestors, they will find the wheel again come full circle, and the vanished glories of the old Inca Empire of the sun once more dawn on Western South American world. All right, so again, dodge the hijack with the whole Inca thing. These are not the ancient people of the area, guys. So, a lot of people generalize and just say Inca, right? Like saying Maya, and they just leave out every other nation, every other tribe that was there, or like saying Aztec when you're trying to talk about Toltecs or Maya. It's just like it's not the same people. Yeah, the Incas were the last, and they did encounter a lot of this stuff. They did take over a lot of these cities. They even said themselves, we didn't build this. This was already here. So was this all Inca gold, or was it some of the gold that was left over too from other previous peoples, you know? Where are we? Okay, where do we whisper? Where do whispered native Quichua traditions say these lost Inca hordes lie? They lie in forests, the bottoms of lone mountain tarns where the brooding shadows retreat into limbo only for the short space of time when the almost vertical and midday sun casts his beams on the deep, tranquil, dreaming waters and sealed caves to which mystic hieroglyphics whose key is possessed only by one descendant of the Inca at a time, and each generation give the open sesame and in strange subterraneans thousands of years old, which must have been made by mysterious and highly civilized vanished race of South America in a day when the ancient Peruvians themselves were a mere wandering tribe of barbarians, like I just was telling you guys, if not savages, invaders, Inca, Aztec invaders roaming the Cordilleras and the high passes, or still living, perhaps, in some long disrupted Pacific continent from which they came in ships, huh? They try to say they came from the Pacific. America's a true old world. I know South America's literally almost attached to Antarctica in old maps. So we even got access to the worlds beyond the poles. So what you mean they came? It's always somebody came here, right? They never want to say there was actually people here. They never want to say, no, this is Atlantis, right? If all the gold that is buried in Peru were collected, it would be impossible to coin it, so great the quantity, and yet the Spaniards of the conquest got very little compared with what remains, the Indians said. The treasure is so concealed that even we ourselves know not the hiding place. This was what the Peruvians told Cieza de Leon, the soldier priest, about 15 years after the conquest of Peru. They did not think fit to add that there were some among them who knew and closely guarded the tremendous secrets. Cieza de Leon adds, within the space of 8 months in the year 1598, 35 million of gold and silver crossed the bar of San Lucar on its way to Old Seville in 3 cargoes, all right? We've gone over this. We brought bountiful riches to the Iberian Peninsula, pearls and gold, so abundant. They were taking it all. It is golden-tongued Lasso, Garcilaso de la Vega, el Inca, who tells how one of the world's greatest treasures came to vanish in such a way that the secret of the cache has baffled all the cunning and scoundrelism of bold, crazy adventurers of almost all nations under the sun, as well as the ingenuity of the cruelest, keenest wits and intellects in the brains of men. Whoever shipped themselves aboard galleons from Cadiz and the old port of Barrameda to fly poverty and the ever enduring curse of old Spain in all ages, la hambre, hunger, and the plagues and miseries springing from the wars and European broils financed by this stolen gold of the Americas, stolen gold, financed by this stolen gold of the Americas in the late 16th, the 17th, and early 18th centuries. So I thought Africa had all the gold and all the minerals and resources, huh? I thought Africa had all the slaves. It's just like every time we read, it's just, you know, telling you straight up, put it all together, guys. Come on. We're talking about foods, talking about, resources, animals. Come on. True paradise, terrestrial paradise. They just found something right now. I got it the other day. Was it in Michigan or Missouri? I forget. But abundance of this mineral. Future videos, right? All these things that they're finding all over the Americas. Verily, the gentle, lofty, broad Inca had, by his sun god, been revenged on the avaricious and most religious sadist of old Castile and Extremadura and Aragon, upon whose own lands in faraway Spain there now descended the deadly plagues of unemployment and almost universal poverty. So scarce was food to become that if the caballero wished to give a present to the señorita, who was queen of his heart, or the doncella honrada, his niña, his Nina of the center calle of San Sebastian, he was reckoned a very perfect gentle knight. If he gave her a gammon of ham, a large and savory capon pie, or a sirloin of beef, or haunch of venison instead of a jeweled miniature, or a bouquet of flowers, which, after all, stayed the wamblings of no one's hungry belly. As for the lower orders of old Spain, after the mostly stolen riches of the older Americas had poured into old Seville and Madrid, what after the conquest befell them? It happened to hungry picaro, or famished knave of a boy porter, once well off under the old Moors of the Alcazar and Granada. He was well off with the Moors. Who was he? Most likely Sephardic Jew. They lived very prosperous under the Moors, remember? That he accounted himself lucky could he be employed to carry great weights or a heavy basket as an esportillero and thereby earn a sueldo to silence the call of hunger after the daily portion of soup had been handed out at the abbey. Surely was this a peculiarly ironic punishment on old Spain, who, by her conquistadorian banditti and fanatic black priests, Jesuits, had wrecked a civilization of ancient date wherein no man or woman starved or lacked clothing and shelter. Albeit gold was deemed only a medium for ornamentation and not a medium of exchange. We had so much it didn't mean nothing to us. La venganza upon Spanish bandits who had committed the atrocities whose authors Las Casas forbore to name. Now let us raise the curtain on this drama of history. You see that? Even Las Casas left out a lot of names. And he's saying he did it on purpose. Now today at Cachamarca or Casamarca, Amaraca, remember Amaracapana, that's part of that kingdom. You are shown a room which the Inca Atahualpa had to fill with treasures for his ransom. A heap of gold ornaments as tall as his upraised arms could reach, and as broad as the span of his arms outstretched. The conquistadores were not niggardly in their estimation. That means greedy. All right, remember the N word literally in all the old dictionaries meant very greedy, very cheap, very greedy, stingy, very stingy in their estimation of what His Inca Majesty's liberty might be worth. The usual estimate in that this room could contain around $500 million, or say 100 million pounds of gold. The conquistadores did not welcome gems. They looked with disfavor on them. In fact, for had they not found so many splendid emeralds, pearls, turquoises, and diamonds of fine wire of the lapidarian, the bottom of the lapidary market had been knocked clean out. Wedges of gold were preferred, till even they became so common. What a Castilian soldier man would liefer have, a jennet or Castilian stallion, or a quart of wine, or pair of shoes? Don Francisco Pizarro, el gobernador y marqués del Peru, drew a lime and bright red round the walls of this cave room of Aladdin, or Ali Baba's 40 thieves, which is 17 feet wide and 20 feet long, and which the Inca said he could easily fill with gold. The red line was 9 feet above the stone floor. The Spaniards stripped the gold plating from the Cusco Royal Temple walls. Guys, there was gold. You know how we have wallpaper today in houses? There was gold paper, gold, uh, like overlay. There was a gold overlay on the walls. A lot of these gold overlays, these tablets, is what they brought. You know, Father Crespi, the Indians. You guys seen the flat gold, and that was on the walls, on temples in the rainforest in Ecuador. Same thing. So this matches the description of what's it call it, Marco Polo, when he went to the farthest east. All right, the farthest east, where he met the Grand Khan, where he had temples that had gold on the walls. He explains all this. If you really pay attention to a lot of the descriptions of Marco Polo in this land they never found, this mystery far east land they never found today, he was describing a lot of these temples of the ancient Americans, word for word, same way they describe them when they found them, the colonists, in these old books. That's what I'm trying to tell you. All right. So again, the Spaniards stripped the gold plating from the Cusco Royal Temple walls and the yard-wide gold guttering which ran around the temple like a coronal frieze. Listen, they even took the gold pipes which fed with pure water. This is exactly how Marco Polo describes some of these cities and temples that he went and visited in the farthest east, which they haven't found today, guys, because he was in America. That's why. So even the gold pipes that fed the water, I bet you that had something to do with something with health, right? Just like copper and water conduct, it's natural science here, man. Just keeping it natural. Shout out to keeping it natural. Natural by law. Yeah, natural by law. They even took the gold pipes which fed pure water from the snows of the Cordilleras, the 5 fountains rising and falling in iridescent displays in the lovely garden close of the Temple of the Sun. The native goldsmiths were a whole month melting down this gold from Cusco Temple into bars worth today some 5 million pounds or $25 million. All right, so guys, I know you're like, well, I was just thinking about it as I read. I have to read you I have really old versions of the Marco Polo stories, right, his travels. So we're gonna get into that just so you guys can see what I mean. You're gonna remember these. Remember how all these times we've described these temples, the so-called Incas and the Mayas and all that. You're gonna see who they were, who Marco Polo was describing. So exquisite was the jeweler's work of some of these antiques that even the rude bandit Pizarro was moved to preserve it to send to the court in Old Spain. But like soldiers in all ages, the Castilians and Extremadurans, Moorish Sephardic people, might be trusted never to forget that they had a belly with two desires, and that after the hard battle, the warrior wanted his recreation. These hardy soldiers swore by Venus as ardently as by Midas, Golden's ass ears. I have an engraving of piquant character taken from a very rare book published at Frankfurt on the Rhine 66 years after the conquest of Peru. It is a Latin history of America and tells the story, not to the approval of latter Spanish historians, of what happened the morning after the amazing victory over the Incas' host outside the walls of old Cusco. Huh? City of David, Sacsayhuaman. The Spaniards ate and slept all night, as far as they were able, for they had fought like Israelites in David's famished armies, huh? They had fought like Israelites, huh? You see where they compare themselves a little different. Or like buccaneers in Darien, who were so hungry they could have sacrificed some bole, yeah. Just like them actually. Indians to their teeth, yeah. Yeah, like pirates actually. That's how they did it. In the morning, they strolled into the country, a mile outside the camp at Caxamarca, and lit on many handsome nude Inca women bathing in the imperial open-air baths. The picture shows the bearded Castilians wading into the water and hailing the reluctant women to the nearby groves, all right, where they probably raped them. Again, don't picture the white evil boogeyman. These are Moorish Sephardic Jews, a lot of these people, a lot of these conquistadors. These, with others ravished in the Incas' camp, totaled, if we are to believe some old and not too discreet Spanish chronicler of the Indias Occidentales, no fewer than 5,000 women. 5,000 they raped. Valde, as the Latinist historian hints, Venus, Bacchus, and Saint Midas had a rare day out in that year of 1533 in the dying empire of old Peru. They even did it in like a ritualistic pagan way. What are you saying, man? Bacchus? Yeah, that's what they made the Israelites worship. Bacchus, the Romans, and do their carnivals and walks, the processions, the carnival processions. Yeah. When Atahualpa was brought prisoner into the presence of Pizarro, the Inca emperor was wearing a magnificent collar of emeralds, of great size and extreme brilliancy. The gems blew such a flame of avarice alight in the brain or soul of the conquistadores that, as Ciesa de Leon writes, listen to this first-hand account, guys, of what Atahualpa was wearing. If, when the Spaniards entered Cusco, they had not committed other tricks and had not so soon executed their cruelty in putting Atahualpa to death, I know not how many great ships would have been required to bring such treasures to old Spain, as is now lost in the bowels of the earth, and will remain so because those who buried it are now dead. Pizarro at once sent emissaries foot to Cusco, and emissaries or mercenaries, and 3 of the conquistadorian soldiers brought back gold to the Spanish camp at Caxamarca. Each horse soldier got a share of 8,800 castellanos de oro, gold castellans, and 362 marks in silver, each mark weighing 8 ounces. The infanteria got half as much each man. The share-out started a great gambling saloon going night and day, which beats almost anything, even in the great days of the Poker Flat Saloon in the Wild West of Bret Hart's prime. All right, you guys hear that? All this history, they don't really teach us about all these little details, what's going on. But and also they got us picturing only pale-skinned people doing this. Yeah, you see, they started hustling. They had so much bounty, so much share, so much money. They started hustling, betting, playing cards. You know, come on. As John Harris picturesquely put it in his Moral History of the Spanish West Indies from London, 1705, written as if he had been on the scene as an eyewitness, rather than one writing nearly 200 years later. Debts were paid in wedges of gold, and no Spaniard troubled if a creditor got twice the amount of his debt. Nothing was so cheap, so common, so easy to be got as gold and silver. A sheet of paper went for 10 Castilians of gold. The three emissaries brought back also the rifled treasures from the Sun Temple of Old Cusco. They comprised an immense freight of gold and silver vessels loaded on the backs of 200 staggering, sweating Indians. It was almost more than 12 men could do to, to heave even one of the gold vessels. And when they entered, there, the Spanish camp, the great massy gold throne of the Inca, and a heavy gold funnel of a fountain, Pizarro felt, as did Nadir Shah in the middle of the 18th century when he broke into the Dewan Isha in the old throne room of the Moguls in Delhi and bore off to Iran the great golden peacock throne. The Inca's queen, says an old Quichua tradition I heard in Peru, had, when her husband was made prisoner, offered for his liberation on a room full of gold, from the floor up to the ceiling, as high as his conqueror could reach. And before the sun set on the third day, she kept her promise, but Pizarro broke his, for he said, struck with the marvelous exhibition of such treasures, I will not me whence all these treasures come. You guys hear that? See how he switched it? He got evil, but Pizarro broke his. Alright, sorry. Pizarro had heard, goes on the native Peruvian tradition, that the Incas possessed a secret, inexhaustible mine, or enormous depository of mysterious character, which lay in a vast subterranean tunnel, or road, running many miles underground beneath his imperial dominions. Here were kept the accumulated riches of the country. Alright, guys, so remember, just like the story of Father Crespi, right? They were going, remember Tayo's Cave? Remember Tayo's Cave? You know, in Ecuador, and all these stories about them going and finding these temples in the rainforest, and that's where they're finding all these golds and even going underground. They told Father Crespi this stuff. The poor queen begged for delay, and in the meantime went to consult the oracles of the priest of the sun. In the course of the sacrifice, the high priest asked her to look into the black mirror. The black mirror. She looked and shuddering saw a picture of the fate of her husband, inevitable, whether or no the gold were delivered to the conquistadorian and most Spanish Catholic bandits. The horrified, grief-stricken queen ordered that the entrance to the great tunnel, a mason door in the rocky wall of the cliff gorge, be closed, and this was done under the direction of the high priest and the magicians. The chasm was hidden from sight and entirely closed by filling its depths with huge masses of rock. When the leveled off surface was reached, it was hidden under green grass and bushes, and made to appear like a natural lawn covering a rock, so that not the slightest sign of any fissure was perceptible to the eye. Spanish avarice was foiled, and the secret was known only to purebred Indians of Quichua, Inca birth, and never to mestizos or half-castes, who it was thought could never be trusted with any such knowledge. I have a remarkable sequel of this story to tell later. As the fatal day drew on, the Inca asked to be taken into the open air to see a large comet, green, black, and nearly as big as a man, which streamed across the Peruvian skies, a Dracan. It was on a day in July-August 1533. Then, at the suggestion of the infamous and fanatic black monk, Valverde, a monk of that very order, the sadistic Dominican, which in the most holy Inquisition drenched the white worlds of old Europe and Asia and the Americas in blood and tears. What white worlds? What you mean? Those are swarthy places you just named. So, you hear that? On the pretense of securing the salvation of burning souls, the luckless emperor of the more rational sun cultus was strangled for the good of his soul after he had been baptized. So they said that he might escape burning at the stake in the public plaza of old Cusco. All right. So what they talking about is how they used to burn everybody. You know, the Indians or anybody that wasn't a Christian or a follower of Jesus. They used to burn them. And remember what Atahue, I forget his name, Atahue, said, the chief in Cuba and from Hispaniola, when they captured him, he asked them when they were burning him alive, they were telling him, you can confess now, you can confess now, so your soul, so at least your soul can go to heaven, so it doesn't just go to hell. While they were burning him alive, and he said, and he asked them, this is a true story, guys. This is historic. I have a video on this. He asked them, are there Christians in heaven? And they said, yeah, there's plenty of Christians in heaven. He's like, well, then I definitely don't want to go there if Christians are there. I'd. So yeah, just a little side story there. Yeah, so they were burning people, right? Murdering people. As a mass was held and a solemn funeral followed, when the dirges and the chants rose to the diabolical skies, here and in the chapel, Gonzalo and Francisco Pizarro attended in black mourning habits, whether this was out of pure hypocrisy or dictated by remorse or twinges of conscience. Only those can say who may penetrate into the dark depths of the souls of these ruthless, stern, and fearless men who built a great empire on the tarnished blades of men who were simultaneously zealous Christian Catholics, hardy pioneers, and brigands who would stick at nothing to gain gold. Theodore de Brie, writing in 1596 in Latin, shows the monk, the black Dominican Vincent de Valleverde, approaching the Inca in the middle of the tumult of the Indians, with cross and breviary in hand, or, as some say, the Bible. An engraving shows Pizarro, the breaker of faith with the Inca, ordering his strangling by blackamoors. Listen, who's strangling the chief? Blackamoors. Let that sink in. Oh, they were forced to do it. Kurimeo. Oh, you think they're the only blackamoors? Oh, so you're saying Pizarro's not a blackamoor? See, that's the confusion right there. All right, I'm gonna read that to you again, right? The breaker of faith. They were trying to break his faith, right? Break his spirit, the Inca, ordering his strangling by blackamoors and closing his ears against the advice of some of the Castilian captains that the Inca be sent home to the Khazar, to the Khazar, to the Khazar, to the Khazar. Black man, Charles V, Carlos Quinto, the Khazar, the Tsar, the King, the Emperor, the Khazar, in old Spain, and that the Spaniard should not pollute his hands with the blood of an inoffensive man, and a king at that. Also for the dead emperor, Francisco Pizarro, put on black mourning clothes and ordered a ceremonial funeral. The gold and silver brought into Caxamarca by the Indians were weighed. There were 26,000 pounds of pure silver, 3,600,500 castellanos worth of gold, called pesos by the Spaniards and reckoned each at a crown and a half. Trices, vices, all right, that's it, Latin. They gave Carlos V, right, or Charles V in Spain, so-called black man, right, a fifth, 400,000 pesos, which suggests that our Lord the King was unlucky in the division. Each knight in the conquistadorian army got 8,900 gold pesos and 185 pounds of silver. 90 captains got 30 to 40,000 gold pesos, while Hernando Pizarro, the conquistador's brother, received fifth of the treasure. Yet sagely comments de Brie, it is worthy of note that the barbarous murder of that prince, the Inca, did not remain unpunished, for afterwards they perished miserably who had conspired to cause the Incas' murder. It may be added, too, that in the following century the Spanish Council of the Indies at Seville allowed no man to ship from Seville in any galleon bound to the Indies unless he attested in writing that he was not of the King of Pizarro and Almagro. I freely admit that Bartolomé de las Casas, the noble Dominican monk and champion of the Indians, yeah, right, made what atonement he could. Certainly no Spanish kings or Holy Roman emperors would or did approve of the assassination of home or foreign kings and emperors whose personages they would deem sacred, no matter whether by divine right they govern wrong or right. All right, just want to show you guys something real quick. Okay, 1 second. We're talking about Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, right? You see this last one here on the right? That's from a historical painting, which is in the Larco Museum in Peru. So they're saying, remember, they say, oh, no emperor wanted to kill them, but he took over. He took over, right? This is the part of the original. There's still someone cut off here in the bottom, but this is him right here, Carlos Quinto, who took over as the king. He became king of the Incas, guys. He became emperor of the Incas. The Holy Roman Emperor also became emperor of the Incas, Carlos Quinto. Carlos Quinto, Charles V. We're talking about a swarthy man, a very swarthy man, just like Atahualpa, right next to him. That's Atahualpa who we're talking about. They murdered. That's who they murdered, Atahualpa, and that's Charles V. All right? We ain't talking about so-called the white man came and enslaved Africans and no, man, get out of those Disney stories, fantasy stories, and let's get into some real history because you're leaving out a whole history and a whole story to be told. People went through this stuff. Real people went through this stuff. There was a real middle passage, but you're seeing it in a whole wrong way. Okay? All right, real quick, see that? All right, this is who we're talking about. Atahualpa and Charles V. This is who we're talking about right now. Both sides, Swarty, shout out to Con Drop. He calls it a more on more war. Black on black crime. So, certainly no Spanish kings or Holy Roman emperors would or did approve the assassination of home or foreign kings and emperors whose personages they would deem sacred no matter whether by divine right they govern wrong or right. Anyhow, the brothers Pizarro followed the Incas bare in deep mourning, and after bearing the royal corpse into the yard of the convent of San Francisco, they allowed the Peruvians to take the body over the Andes to royal Quito, where, as it was his birthplace, the soon dying Inca had said he wished to be buried. Peru, as England of the Dark Ages had reason to say to her dark soul, woe unto thee, O land, when thy king is a monk and not a soldier. When the news reached the queen, she followed her husband into the land of the shades, committing suicide to escape a fate worse than death. No cant phrase, this in that age, you know what they would have done to her is what basically they're talking about, you know, which later befell the young Inca princes and nobles, whom the devilish-hearted cold sadist El Virrey Don Francisco Toledo, a man after the heart of the butcher of Alba, exiled to the fever-haunted frontiers of the Darien Peninsula, or broke their hearts by deporting them to the snowy waste of the southern Andean Cordillera. The story usually told of one of the lost caches, that of the immense treasure that was whisked away from the clutching hands of Don Francisco Pizarro. Waiting for it in the camp near Old Cusco is that 11,000 llamas, right? Llamas frightened with gold from Cusco and elsewhere in the old empire of Peru were on their way to Pizarro's camp when the Quichua Indians heard of the assassination of their Inca. All right, of their Inca. Guys, because we are talking about llamas, real quick, we've shown this before. All right, I just want to show something right here. Very interesting. All right. 1 second, guys. Okay. Talking about llamas, right? Llamas. We're talking about Cusco, right? And I said Jerusalem, city of David, right? Okay. You guys ain't in no rush, right? Okay. Hope not. Hurry up, Kurimeo. Keep reading. All right. Jerusalem. Shout out to Mia from Finland. Shout out to Mia from Finland. She sent me this image. I had seen it before, and a lot of people had already pointed it out. So this is supposed to be Jerusalem, right? The first thing I want you to notice is it's surrounded by mountains, like real mountains. You don't see that over there in the Middle East. You don't see that. It's hills. It's not real high mountains. There's not real high mountains, guys. Now I'm assuming into something, right? We're talking about llamas. We're talking about llamas, right? Are you telling me this is a camel right here? You must not know what a camel looks like. Guys, this is a llamas right here. They're shown in Jerusalem, and this all drawing. Llamas. That's not a llama, that's a camel. Kurimeo. Camels actually come out of North America. Yeah, camels come out of North America. Now let me show you the difference between llamas and camels. Okay? Now these are also our sheep. We used to herd llamas. We get wool off of llamas. Okay? So we have sheep now. There we go, real quick. So what you notice with llamas is that they have like a giraffe long neck. They have a very like stiff long neck. Like these guys. You see that? Long neck. Right? Long necks. Like stick up. They don't bend. They don't bend. Camels bend. Camels' necks bend. Okay? Camels' necks bend. They bend, right? They don't go straight up. They bend. Do you guys see that? They bend. They bend, right? Llamas. Hold on. Llamas go straight up. They don't bend. All right? So again, use your senses, guys. Go straight up. It doesn't bend. That's a llama. That's a llama. These are llamas. They're depicting in a mountainous Jerusalem. You see the gates, right? Surrounded by the city, right? Now watch this. I'm going to show you what Cusco looked like when the Spanish got there. All right? Hold on, guys. Okay? This is what Cusco looked like when they got here. Temples, buildings, palaces, what you would call mosque or whatever. This is Cusco with the gates. All right? Just like Jerusalem. Many images of Jerusalem also depicting the building with the 3 walls. Well, that's Sacsayhuaman. This part is Sacsayhuaman with the 3 walls. Okay? Let's see. Well, you guys get the drift of what I'm saying. I just got reminded since we saw a llama. We started talking about llamas. Llamas. I can't make this up, guys. Atahualpa even said, look, Atahualpa. Look what it says here. Atahualpa, right? This is how they were living. Remember all that go in a city with streets, towns, palaces, buildings, not savages. This is what they Spanish found, right? Just like the city of Jerusalem with 8 gates, 7 gates. Yes, same exact thing. This image right here is from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the Jewish National and University Library. Oh, they know. Cusco. Oh, they know. All right. Let's go back to the book now, guys. Sorry. Okay. Hope you guys found that interesting. I know, don't get confused. Don't get confused. All right, with Judah and Jerusalem. Don't get confused. Judea. Don't get confused. Many Bibles separate them. Judea and Jerusalem. They made us think all these places were right next to each other. Remember that when he saw Mount Nebo, he was still in Exodus. Moses was still alive. He never made it to Jerusalem. Moses never made it. Remember, it was Joshua who took over. Joshua. Joshua went into Jerusalem with the sword. He took out the Jebusites. So here we go again. So when the news reached the queen, she followed her husband into the land of shade. So she committed suicide, right? The story usually told of one of the lost caches out of the immense treasure that was whisked away from the clutching hands of Don Francisco Pizarro, waiting for it in the camp near Old Cusco, is that 11,000 llamas. All right, that 1,000 llamas, frightened with gold from Cusco and elsewhere in the old empire of Peru, were on their way to Pizarro's camp when the Quichua Indians heard of the assassination of their Inca. The Indians drove the llamas off the road and buried the 100 pounds of gold with each animal of the caravan was laden. Sir Clemens Markham chose, whose opinion as one with peculiarly intimate knowledge of Peru must carry weight, said that 1,100,100 pounds of gold lies hidden in the mountains behind Asangaro. The Cordillera de Asangaro is a wild sierra little known to the Americans or the British, but I may add for the information of those interested that the name Asangaro, or in the Quichua tongue, the tongue of old Inca, Peru, means place farthest away. It is believed that it was the farthest eastern point in the Andean Cordilleras, which the old Inca Empire dominated. Yet despite the fact that the early conquistadorian and Pizarro's other camp fellows worked old Inca mines in the eastern montaña of this wild region, no inkling of the location of the wondrous cache ever reached their hungry ears. There is a tradition current in the mystic East, and perhaps derived from Atlanteans who quitted their great motherland. What motherland? The Antilles? You talking about North America? What you talking about? Which we call the Egyptian priests of Sais. Hold on, sorry. Atlantis who quitted their great motherland before the time of the terrible cataclysm, which we recall the Egyptian priests of Sais and Heliopolis told Solon happened about 9,700 BC, when a military section of the Atlantean peoples had overrun Western and Southeastern Europe and North Africa. Yeah, ancient Americans. That the central cathedral temple of old Atlantis, capital's hill city, Sardegon, had a dome-shaped ceiling from which flamed the magnificent central sun of blazing gold. The late inheritors of the remains of the civilization of the Atlantean imperial colony of High Brazil, of South America, the Incas of Peru, Peru, as one has stated, being derived from a word not found in the Quichua or native Peruvian tongue. All right, we're gonna get actually other stories on the etymology and origin of Peru. All right, it's gonna get deep, guys. I got so many books I've been wanting to read all these years, but we had to have a certain understanding, you know. At least I did, so I can tell it better, so I can explain it better. And I think a lot of us are more informed now and able to discern what we're gonna get into a lot better too. All right, when it comes to Peru, just one thing: Peru, and Hindu means the east. Yeah, in old Hindu, it means the east. So Peru was from India, right? From Hindustan is towards the east, right? The east, right? The farthest east. So, Vita, meaning the god of the sun, had a glorious sun of purest gold, which shone with truly dazzling refulgence from the walls of Cusco, great temple of the sun. It was there when the keels of Don Francisco Pizarro's caravels and galleons touched the shallows of the Peruvian coast in AD 1530. The very eyeballs of the beholder were pained by its scintillations. But when Pizarro's conquistadores laid their bandit hands on this ancient civilization, as the Carian Coloans, remember the Carians? The Carians came from so-called Atlanteans. They came from America. Remember, we got this on other books, right? Correlating. Had done before them in relation to what was left of the communities of the old Carians, Carians. Cara means black. Did you guys know Cara? Carolina. For 4 centuries, its whereabouts have remained a mystery, the close secret of one of not more than two of the Incas' posterity. Be sure that there is living today in one of the valleys of the Peruvian Cordilleras some Peruvian, little suspected by his fellows, who knows where this sun went to ground. In the neighborhood of modern Cusco, I have heard some of the traditions about this mystic lost sun. How well its shining wonder attests the old melancholy and banished grandeur of a great race. The Quichuan peones say it was fashioned as a human face of solid gold, radiating shafts of light as it blazed from the walls. It personified to the people the sun, and hierarchically to the priests, to doubt the great central sun of the cosmos. The unknown god whom Paul of Tarsus proclaimed to the man of Athens as he stood on Mars Hill. Josephus, you mean? Or the Areopagus? Or he whom the Brahmins of old called Dios, the sky, Deus of the Romans? Oh, you mean the Pisos, according to the Piso, right? This glorious face of refulgence was really at Cusco, a massive plate of purest gold, of enormous width, encrusted thickly with emeralds of superb size and quality and other gems. All that really was in Cusco? That really was in Cusco? Wasn't Paul supposed to be in Jerusalem? At his rising, the rays of the sun fell directly on this face in the temple, where gold blazed back everywhere from walls and ceilings. All right, just like Marco Polo describes too, guys. The cornices were of gold, and a broad frieze of gold led into the stonework, surrounded the whole exterior of the temple. Don Marcio Sierra de Leguizamo, John Leguizamo, Leguizamo, last of the conquistadores of old Peru, spoke of the child of this sun when he wrote the preamble of the will he made at Cusco on September 18th, 1589. I had a figure of the sun made of gold that was placed by the Incas in the house of the sun at Cusco, which is now in the Convento de San Domingo. I believe it is worth 2,000 pesos, and yet I die poor with many children, and I beseech His Catholic and Royal Majesty, Don Felipe, our Lord el Rey, to have pity on them, and may God have mercy on my soul. Leguizamo gambled this smaller son away the night after the day on which he had taken it. He plays away the sun before the dawn, said Fray Acosta, the monk of him. But this son of Leguizamo was merely a plate of gold, on which the image of the sun was carved, and which acted as a lid or cover to a great hollowed stone in the outer wall of the temple, into which libations of chicha, fermented maize beer, we still drink that stuff here, were poured by the people in the festival of Raimi, which reminds one of Ra, the sun god of old Egypt. Okay? The festival of Raimi is the same as the festival of the sun god Ra. We have gone over this already in previous videos, guys. It is the same thing. It is the origin of that. That is the original. Raimi Ra, Raimi, same thing. On either side of the image of the great sun sat the embalmed bodies of 13 Incas in their chairs of gold, standing on gold slabs. In these chairs they had sat in life. The outraged Indians made haste to hide these sacred mummies with the rest of the treasure, and only 26 years later did the hungry and never-resting Polo de Ondegardo, conquistador, accidentally light on the mummies of 3 kings and 2 queens, the latter removed from the corresponding temple of the moon. All the corpses were, of course, stripped of their jewelry and broken in pieces by the sacrilegious hands of these insatiable treasure hunters. Along with the royal mummies in 1533, there also went to ground a great gold life-size statue of the Inca Huayna Capac, and only one man knew the secret of that cache, and he again no Spaniard or half-breed mestizo. If the Christians have not found the Inca's treasure, said the prudent Peruvians to Pedro Cieza de Leon in 1550, it is because they are so concealed that even we know not the place. Y por la Santísima Virgen, had anyone at that time of day admitted that he had so much a blind horse wink of knowledge about one such cache, then El Virrey would have experienced such a good Catholic fervent desire to assoil his soul of the accursed memory of hidden gold, that he would have called on a holy Dominican father of the holiest Inquisition to shrive him with fire, anoint him with burning oil, and crown him with faggots in the open plaza of Cusco or Lima, unless the secret were instantly divulged to the audiencia. Nobody went about boasting of knowledge of that sort in those picturesque days, or tried to lead hungry official Castilians of old Inca fairy golden gardens on false trails of ancient gold bugs, unless he wished to save himself the trouble of committing suicide. If you were a Catholic conquistador, not a hidalgo rank of the post Pizarro age, and did not need soul saving of this sort, you yet found it best to keep your knowledge to yourself, for you were a long way from the justice and the alguacils of old Spain. Did El Virrey or the Adelanto, hearing how that you frequented bodegas and posadas in a way you were not accustomed to of old, and oft-sounded fellows about the locations of likely haciendas for sale, sent to Señor el Corregidor, and had you cast into the cárcel or jail to explain your unwanted prosperity and forever cut away from yourself the root of all evil. In the archives at Cusco, I have seen an old yellowed parchment, insect bitten, as is the way in these countries, written by one Felipe de Pomares. He tells a romantic story about an Inca horde of Arabian Nights, splendor and variety, sealed up somewhere in under the ancient fortress of Cusco, on the Sacsayhuaman Hill, all right? So remember, that is the city of David. Sacsayhuaman, the fortress or citadel, literally is a citadel, which literally had a tower, which literally has the muyu or millo of the city of David, the millo where they housed the tower. It was a tower where they housed the Ark of the Covenant once, right? This is a citadel, just like the city of David was a citadel. Sacsayhuaman. So they're telling us right there under that. This is what the story is saying. Carlos Inca, a descendant of an Inca emperor, had married a Spanish lady, Doña Maria Esquivel, who did not think he was ambitious enough to on getting on as he ought, and did not keep her in the style she deemed befitting her rank or his descent from kings. You may call yourself Inca, a lord or hidalgo, but you are only a poor Indian. She one day twitted him. Carlos, who did not rule his poultry run in the way advised by old Spanish hidalgos, or yesterday by ex-Wilhelm II, or William II, Rex et Imperator of Prussia and German right, that is, a cock of the walk, was content to keep Oviedo's sheep and alpacas and not worry about gold of any origin. She somehow found out that he knew where great treasure were hidden. The poor Carlos was plagued night and day until, to gain a night's peace, he consented to blindfold his wife and late at night led her out into the patio of the old hacienda. Under the cold light of the stars, when all around were asleep and no unseen eye was on the watch, he took her by the shoulders, and, although she was exposing him to serious risk of prison or torture in Cusco, twirled her round 3 times. Then, deeming she had become disoriented, he led her down some steps into a concealed vault in or under the fortress. He removed the bandages, and Doña Maria's tongue for once was silenced. She stood on the dusty stone floor of the ancient vault cluttered with gold and silver ingots, exquisite jewelry, and temple ornaments. Round the walls, ranged in fine gold, were life-size statues of long dead and gone Inca kings, along the golden image of the sun, on which the old Incas said the greatest store was missing. But the lovely goldsmith's work was of the same artistic creation as the gold and jeweled plants and flowers which the Peruvian workers made for those wondrous gardens on the isle of Puna in the northern part of the old empire, modern Gulf of Guayaquil, where the Incas retired to hear the melancholy music of the Pacific commerce on the beaches below. Hey, much love and respect, Andrea. Thanks for joining the membership of the channel. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Don Carlos was the custodian of the secret, and from him it passed to his successor. As Mr. Squire, one time U.S. Commissioner in Peru, said in 1870, all I can say is that the secret chamber she had entered has not been found and despoiled. It has not been for want of digging. 300 years have not sufficed to eradicate the notion that enormous treasures are concealed within the fortress of Cusco. For half 300 years of excavation, more or less constant, entirely discouraged the searches for tapadas or buried treasure mounds. Even today, in 1945, the secret of the vault under the Sacsayhuaman Hill may still remain locked up in the breast of some descendant of the Inca. The last man of whom I heard in search of these treasures was one Tito Cusi Ticapato, said to have Inca blood in his veins. It was in 1928, and he planned to accompany an American expedition to quarter another ancient hill near Cusco, where he said the lost caches lie. He was also an inventor and sought for Inca gold to promote and exploit his creations. What struck his imagination, as he said, was the fact, señores, that the old Incas wallpapered their houses with thin sheets of beaten gold, all right? This is what I was saying. This was the wallpaper back then in this place, right? This was gold on the walls. This is what they found and gave to Father Crespi, right? In his collection, he has sheets of gold. These were the wallpaper on the walls of the temples the Indians took from, right? So real quick, again, I know I'm stopping a lot, but I just want to just show people something here in case, I got a lot of new subscribers, guys. Success. Hold on. So. Okay. One second, guys. Be right with ya. So basically what I'm looking for, I can't find it, but Josephus described Jerusalem with 3 walls. Sacsayhuaman is basically the part, let me show you guys, of Cusco where the fortress is. All right, Sacsayhuaman, right? You see the 3 walls, and on the other side is a cliff, just like Josephus describes Jerusalem, or the city of David. On the other side, it has no wall because it's just a cliff, just like he describes it. So the city of David was known to be a citadel, a fortress. This is the fortress, guys. This is a fortress. Sacsayhuaman is literally a fortress, right? Or a citadel, right? And in the middle, right here, I think this is the part right here. So the Muyu Marca, or the Millo. The Muyu, Millo. It was one of the 3 towers that were in the upper part of the Inca temple of Sacsayhuaman. You see this round thing right here, guys? This was the Millo, or the Muyu. This was a tower, a round, tall tower, all right? And that is the same as the Millo of David. Millo of David, okay? And we're just doing it real quick. Millo was a structure in Jerusalem referred to in the Hebrew Bible, first mentioned as being part of the city of David. Not the fake one. It says here, Hezekiah's repair of the Millo is mentioned within a list of repairs to military fortifications, and several scholars generally believe that it was something connected to military activities such as a tower or citadel, significant part of the wall. A tower or citadel. Miyu is Muyu, is Miyu, Muyu. It was a tower. It is part of the citadel. All right, so they're saying that under this complex, Saksawaman, right, is a treasure trove. Look at the size of these megalithic. Possibly could be geopolymer, but I swear these do not look like the concrete ones over there with, you know, that Paul showed in Egypt. This looks like real rock. But it could be something else, you know, it could be also geopolymer, but hey, we'll see. So again, that's Sacsayhuaman, just so you guys can get a reference. And it's overlooking Cusco, or the valley, the central valley, right? Just like Jerusalem is described with two cities, the high city or the low market or the high market, and where the city of David would be is the same area from where you would view Sacsayhuaman from the center of Cusco. It describes, it matches exactly. So I got a video on this, guys, so go check it out if you haven't. All right, go back to the book again. So they're looking for gold. That's in here. All right. Hey, Mod. Hey, welcome, man. Welcome to the club. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you, man. Appreciate you, man. Hey, so they're still looking for this gold under Sacsayhuaman, right? None of the old secrets of the land of the Incas have really perished. There are native societies of the underworld who, age by age, keep them inviolate. Their members are sometimes wandering Catholic priests who, on one day of the year, revert to the celebration of their real relation, the rites of the sun, that central mystic sun of the pre-cataclysmic ancient world, symbolizing the unknown divinity and not an anthropomorphic demiurgus. Peru is a very ancient country. All who sojourn there are soon become deeply impressed by the mystic atmospheres hanging over this strange land. There may be, probably does still remain in some Quichua breast the subconscious perception of the cyclic notion of the ancient world that what has been will be again, when the will comes full circle and the life forces rise in ascendant arc. Ancient glories will be restored. The men play again the part that was played by others whom they never knew, not even in the most shadowy ghost of a dead tradition. Quien sabe? Who knows? Says the gentle and broaden-eyed Peruvian, who knows that he is still ruled by the descendants of the old Spaniards. Holy Roman Empire still rules us, guys. For all the political revolution that was accomplished by Simon Bolivar more than a century ago, be sure then that in some Andean village in a lone vale lives some man who still guards this secret of untold millions. It was in 1925 that the Tito Cusi Ticapato, the Inca descendant we mentioned above, told someone in old Cusco that he had a vision of the night in which he saw the life-size statues of gold-armored Inca emperors of the sun, who had been buried perhaps in the wild and lonely hill of Guanacauri, inside of their sun temple city of old Cusco. Don Jose Eusebio de Llano Zapata, writing in Lima in 1760, in the time of Señor Don Carlos III, King of Spain. Charles III, huh? Guys, remember what he looked like? We just did a video on this recently. He was so swarthy. Tells of a number of these finds, some of them happening in his own day, says he. This is what he says. In our America, men who use sorcery and divining rods to find hidden treasures have been brought before the tribunal of the Holy Inquisition, and I have seen various autos de fe celebrated in Lima, where they punished severely those who persuaded others to engage in this harmful art. So they use divining rods to find hidden treasures, huh? Is that like when, people looking for whales, or, and they use this metal thing where it tells them where the water is, the well? Is that sorcery? Because that's how I found my well here in my land, guys. This guy came. My mom told him come help us find it. He brought these two little metal things, right? And he was walking around and he found the well. He found where we had water and it worked. So a lot of people, because of things like that, were getting, burned at the stake and stuff for being witches and stuff like that. Zapata gives a list of gorgeous finds of hidden gold, both in his own day and in the preceding 17th century. In the days just after the conquistadores, gold and plate, more worth more than 800,000 pesos, were found where the last cacique of Pasmanga, Chimo Capac, who was also lord of Paita and Tumbes, whose capital is Trujillo, had buried it. In another entierro, or cache, a quarter of a league from Trujillo, which is called Tasca, and is on the high road Camino of Guanchacho, Escobar, Corchuelo, and another compañero found over 600,000 pesos. And Gomara tells of a certain Spaniard who found in a huaca plate, which he sold for 50,000 castellanos de oro. Yeah, thousand, thank you, that's what it's called. Moreover, late at the end of the past 17th century, in the Vale of Leyte, in the jurisdiction of Lima, Francisco de Llorenzana found a great earthen jar, gran tinaja de oro, of gold, about 2 3/4 gallon capacity, and he bought the site of the cache and gave his name to the hacienda and the manor house he erected there. In our days, it is common talk in Lima that Alferez Jose de Surso found in el pueblo of the Magdalena, half a league from Cusco, a treasure of great worth. The news has the living appearance of truth. Surso, born in Lima of poor parents, was in his early years a soldier of infantry. Afterwards, he settled himself in the same pueblo, where he became a rich merchant. And when in 1754 he died, he left over 200,000 pesos, which he got in less than 10 years, so that the presumption of the source of his riches is not improbable. I myself possess an old Spanish map made by a Jesuit missioner in the year 1800. It is un plano del Obispado del Cusco, map of the bishopric of Cusco, and shows the route from La Parte de Laguna de Titicaca through this mysterious river canyon of the Huatanay, a wild, unearthly region of mountainly grandeur, where the gloomy rock walls hem in a stream which roars and booms over the boulders, clearing the beds, and hears no sound, save its own dashing from age to age. The trails through this unexplored region, where the Incas maintained for more than 80 years resistance to the Spanish penetration after the murder of their last emperor, are even today full of dangers. As one goes through the winding gorges far up the precipices, eyes unseen are on the watch, and eyries one cannot discern, though old ones laid in burrows may carry be a load of ancient bones, or archaic pottery and artifacts of ancient culture, that will not stay the hands unseen from sending great boulders dashing from the heights on the narrow track on the side of vertiginous precipices. The word of the coming of strangers into these wild and gloomy regions passes with the quickness almost of radio. And down on the lower hot slopes westward of the great cordilleras are always los bandidos, the bandits. Indeed, this route into the unknown recesses of the Sangaro is as perilous as that to another mysterious old Inca ruin which today, shrouded in bush, lies high up in the hills along the upper reaches of the Rio Ene, about 150 miles into the Cerro de Pasco, reached by rail from Lima. A haggard and half-crazed white adventurer, dying in a dirty hovel back of the wharf side of Callao, some years ago told an Englishman about this mysterious Inca ruin. Its walls are plated with pure gold. I came very near it one day on the side of the mountains. The Serrano Indians alone have penetrated the montaña where it lies. They shoot dead at sight all intruders. They shoot straight too, senor. He's like, hey, and they know how to. Hey, they got good shot, man. So don't mess around, because if you mess around, you're gonna find out, right? Wonder is heaped on wonder, Alp on Alp rises, till in the mystic atmosphere, under snowy cordilleras, one comes on a queer and shadowy clue to the existence of an immense treasure greater than any that has gone before. The story which has about it the strange quality of unearthliness, which reminds one once again that this is a very ancient land, goes back to the melancholy days of passing grandeur of an old civilization in the year AD 1533, when the last queen of the Incas, despairing of her unhappy country and murdered imperial consort, committed suicide. The last hopes of an ancient people had faded into the setting sun behind the peaks of the blue and misty Andean Cordilleras, a people of whom the remorseful El Conquistador Don Mancio Sierra de Leguizamo wrote on September 18, 1589, in Old Cusco. The Inca Peruvians were so free from crimes and excesses, the men as well as the women, that the Indian who had 100,000 pesos of gold and silver in his house left it open, merely placing a small stick across the door as a sign that the master was out, and no one could enter or take anything that was inside. When they found we put locks and fear of them, that they might not kill us, not because they believed that anyone would steal the property of another. So when they found we had thieves among us, and men who sought to have or make their daughters commit sin, they despised us. But now they have come to such a pass, in offense of God, owing to the bad example we have set them in all things, that the natives from doing no evil have changed into people who now do no good or very little. But I do what I can to discharge my conscience. Hmm. They made him. They made him start sinning, huh? Somewhere about the year 1844, an old Catholic priest was called to shrive a dying Quichua Indian, direct descendant of the Inca Peruvians. It is a strange sequel to the closing of the Subterranean, of which I spoke above. Bend your ear down to my mouth, Taita, said the dying Indian, whose face was lined like an old parchment, for I have something to tell you which is not for other ears. The story was about a mystery of a labyrinth and a series of amazing tunnels going back far beyond the days of the Inca emperors of the sun. It was told under the inviolable seal of the confessional and could not be divulged by the priest under the pain of hell, fire, and it would probably have remained a secret had not the old priest and a trail of the mountains come into the company of a sinister Italian who was on his travels to Lima. This Italian with very dark, piercing eyes, a hypnotic stare, talked to the old priest, who unwittingly let drop a hint about a long sought hidden and very ancient treasure. The sinister gentleman, said to have come from Naples, somehow managed to hypnotize the old priest, who was a native Quichua, into telling him the story the priest had learned under confession from the dying Peruvian peasant. The latter had said that this strange secret was known to many pure-blooded Quichua Indians, descendants of the old Incas, but not to the half-caste mestizos, who were deemed unreliable. Taita, said the dying man, I will reveal to thee what no white man or European, he be Spaniard or American or English, knows. The story he told was what I have related of the closing of the amazing tunnel labyrinths by the high priest of the Sun Temple of Old Cusco and the magicians under the eye of the imperial consort of the last emperor, Atahualpa. The old priest added that about 1830 rumors of this tunnel had somehow reached the ears of the Peruvian authorities, for they had sent out emissaries to hunt for the concealed opening. These emissaries were disguised as scientists and archaeologists, but so well had the secret been hidden that they went back to Lima and La Paz no wiser than they set out. Between the years 1848 and 1850, the well known Russo American mystic, listen to this, Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, this is Zephyr's quoting his source, was traveling in Peru, which was as badly, or perhaps worse, infested with brigands than it is in some regions today. She was told something of this curious story of a Peruvian she met on a mountain trail in the Andes. And in Lima, she rather curiously encountered the very Italian who had hypnotized the old priest into breaking the seal of the confessional. The Italian said he had since visited what he believed to be one of the entrances to what suggests to the imagination a great cave of Aladdin, and the wonderful and very mysterious labyrinth of ancient kings seen by Herodotus on Lake Moeris of the Western Nile, and already ancient, even in his far off day. However, I had neither the money nor the time to make a personal verification, and this I hope to do some time later, he added. Madame Blavatsky herself journeyed southward. No, I don't think she was blind. She's the founder of the Theosophical Society. She's with Aleister Crowley and all these other satanic people, New Age people. All right. One of her master teachers was Jamal Afghani. All right. She said it herself. We've gone over this. And Jamal Afghani was also one of Drew Ali's or Thomas Drew's master teachers. When he went to Egypt, he got initiated, all right, by, into that same ancient mystic order of Blavatsky was in. Okay, that's who she was. That's it. And go and check out the previous videos and don't take this all personal. It is what it is. Madame Blavatsky herself journeyed southward from Lima to Arica. Look at this word right here, Arica. If you add an F right here, what do you get? Africa, right? Africa? Arica. This is in Peru. And it literally has date palms like Egypt. It's a desert, looks like Egypt. Yeah. And there's a lot of ancient history in this area, guys, which we're going to get into. It was a year or so after the story had been corroborated in her hearing in different parts of Peru and by people entirely unconnected. We reached Arica, at the F here, Arica, near sunset, and at a certain point on the lonely coast, we were struck by the appearance of an enormous rock nearly perpendicular, which stood in mournful solitude on that shore. And apart from the Cordillera of the Andes, as the last rays of the setting sun strike the face of the rock, one can make out with an ordinary opera glass curious hieroglyphics inscribed on the volcanic surface. When Cusco was the capital of old Peru, so Cusco was the capital or the navel, the center. Cusco literally means the navel of the earth, guys. Wherever Jerusalem was, it was considered the navel of the earth. Mount Zion and Jerusalem was considered in the navel of the earth. The Quichua word Cusco means navel of the earth. It contained a temple of the sun, famed far and near for its magnificence. It was roofed with thick plates of gold, and its walls were covered with the same precious metal. The eaves throws carrying off the rainwater were also made of pure gold. In the west wall, the architects had contrived an aperture in such a way that when the sunbeams reached it, caught and focused them inside the temple's nave and sanctuary, stretching inside the temple like a golden chain from one sparkling point to another. The rays encircled the walls, illuminating the grim idols and disclosing certain mystic signs at other times invisible. Madame Blavatsky does not mention one curious fact about the mystic sun temple of old Cusco, a fact found only in a very rare manuscript chronicle of the Conquistadorian age. It enshrined a mystic white stone called by the Incas Iura Krunu, which seems to have combined the functions of an oracle with that of a crystal in which visions and pictures were seen. In some ways, it recalls the mystic Urim and Tumim and the shining light of the breastplate of the high priest of the old Jewish temple. All right? Come on, man. The old what? Where? In Jerusalem? Themselves probably derived by Moses from the ancient Egyptian breastplate of the goddess of truth, Theme. Probably, nah. Identical with Greek goddess Themis. The monks in the train of Pizarro felt impelled to make an end of this mystic stone on which the rays of the rising sun also shone through the aperture. They alleged it had done great damage to native converts to Catholic Christianity, espantándolos con tas extrañas crueldades que algunos perdían la vida, frightening them with such extreme cruelties that some lost their lives. The padres determined on a given day to destroy the white stone. They first read prayers with the Indians, then round about the house of the sun, Casa del Sol, and the white stone, Piedra Blanca. They laid much firewood and set fire to it in different parts, exorcising the spot beforehand. And when the fire was bigger, there was heard great cries and horrid howlings, that they were persuaded were those of the devil, El Demonio, that had been exorcised by our holy Mother Church. Probably in the old Cusco temple of the sun, there may have been thaumaturgists among the priestly corps who must have had much curious and secret knowledge about the origin, history, and purpose of the amazing labyrinthine tunnels of ancient Peru and other arcana of a very ancient race. The Sun Emperors these priests served were men of a very different type of feature from the downtrodden Quichuas one may meet today on the Andean trails. All right, different peoples, very different type of people. These ancient people with the modern people. There are pictures still to be seen in old colonial church of Santa Ana, north of Cusco, which portray the Incas as men of royal dignity, of a much lighter color, as kingly as any pharaoh of old Egypt. All right, so this guy, and again, I've mentioned this before with this guy and all the other Atlantis researchers, like Robert Seffer, right, who make all these ancient people try to make them so-called white or pale skin. As you guys see, he said lighter color, just like the pharaohs of Egypt, right? He's literally saying the Egyptians were so-called white. Like, remember, this book is from 1947, guys. Like, that's back in the 80s and 90s when we still kind of believed that, and not even, right? We were letting that go back then. All right. So, and their priestly aristocrats were also men with a high forehead, slightly aquiline nose, thin mouth, firm chin, and refined and intellectual face of much majesty or serenity. Yeah, that root race thing is garbage, man. Yeah, that root race thing is pseudo, man. Maybe one day, if I care, I'll break it down why. It's so simple. If you don't see why, if you've been following me, you should already know why. That's pseudo, man. That's New Age. That's Blavatsky and them. That's still Solov. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's hijack, guys. One of the approaches to the great tunnels lay, and still lies, near old Cusco, but it is masked beyond discovery. This hidden approach leads directly into an immense subterranean, which runs from Cusco to Lima, right? Subterranean tunnels, walls, all right? As the crowd flies a distance of 380 miles, a subterranean world, right? Then turning southward, the Great Tunnel extends into what until about 1868 was modern Bolivia, around 900 miles. Guys, we've gone over these tunnels in South America, right? In a lot of old videos. There's just more correlation. At a certain point, the tunnel cuts into and is intersected by a royal tomb, inside which, with all the ingenuity employed by the old priestly architects and engineers of ancient Egypt, when they wished to trap tomb robbers of the pharaohs thousands of years ago, the ancient Inca engineers had contrived two cunningly arranged doors, consisting of two enormous slabs of carved stone, pivoted to turn and close so tightly that one can see not the faintest sign of crack or joint. In fact, their position can be discerned on the sculptured walls of the royal subterranean mausoleum only by reading secret signs whose key is in the possession of hereditary custodians. It is whispered that the old caste of custodians of these wonderful tunnels and their secrets has not died out. Even today, in 1945, one of these pivoted turning slabs, so cleverly sculptured and invisibly hinged, concealed the southern mouth of the branch of the tunnel leading to Lima. The other masked the southern entrance to the Great Tunnel to the former Bolivian end. This former Bolivian corridor, today located in Chile, runs southward, passing through the Tarapaca and Cobillo, or Cobijo, which are in modern Chile. It must then turn eastward, passing through or under the Cordillera and skirting the mysterious Atacama Desert of northern Chile. Itself, this Atacama Desert, the home of curious remains of subterranean type, right? This region, this is where they're finding the oldest mummies, guys, all these old mummies in the world. And even in the late 17th century, rendezvous of a gang of pirates who called themselves Brethren of the Black Flag, huh? Used 5 languages to hide their movements, and who left a bundle of musty and faded documents and code found in 1934 in Santiago about a cache they made here in this weird desert. The southern end of the tunnel is thus lost somewhere in this mysterious salt desert of Atacama, a thirst-stricken waste of llanos and alkaline deserts, out of which flow only scanty runlets of brackish water, so that coastal ports in this region rely on sweet water brought from long distances. Maybe when the mysterious tunnel was made, perhaps thousands of years ago, the climate was very different from today, and the landscape one of beauty and fertility. Quién sabe, señores? Who knows? Over this mysterious tunnel crosses a carretera, cart track, or high road, which runs across the northern edge of the great desert to apply named to the aptly named Rio de Mala Agua de Loa, or Bad Water River, passing Indio Muerto, Shacktown, or Dead Indian, Gauche, and ending up at Old Potosi. Truly is this Desierto de Atacama one of the strange secrets, all right? And I agree, we're gonna have future videos on the cultures. They weren't just Incas, guys. This is what I'm saying. Like, I'm gonna get really deep, I'm gonna get really specific. I'm gonna show you all these people that lived in these areas before the Incas, how ancient they were, how advanced they were. You know, we don't know nothing about them, but there is studies out there and anthropological work on them that nobody ever goes through. All right, so we're gonna definitely go through that. All right, so again, all these tunnels under all these places running for miles, right? Corroborating what we've already read in other books, other stories, other legends. You know, when Bolivia had a port at Cobijo, her government, about 1850, heard rumors about this mysterious tunnel of gold and lost secrets, and secretly sent out agents to try to locate it. Alas, for success, the quest met with exactly that attendant the seekers of other old Inca caches, all in vain. Probably the Chilenos are too matter of fact and unimaginative to waste time on such a quest in what is now their territory, and perhaps they may know nothing about it, in which case this book will bring to their bureaucratic knowledge a very rare secret. Arica, again, you add the F there, what do you get? And between the A and the R, you get Africa, right? Arica, this is in between Chile and Peru, a port now also in Chile, but in Peru in the 1860s, stands not far from a mysterious bluff into which are cut the hieroglyphics seen by Madame Blavatsky. Hieroglyphics. Come on now. Hold on, guys. Or Peru. All right. Arica. Africa. Arica. Archaeological findings indicate that Arica was inhabited by different native groups dating back to 10,000 years. All right, so most likely goes way back, even beyond that. So a lot of date palms, very desert-like place. All right, let's see if we can get some other pictures. There we go. Well, this part is green, but most of it is desert. Look at that. We're gonna definitely get into these regions. All right, and so many date palms. So they're finding Blavatsky was there. She must have known something. That's why she was there. All right. Again, very desert-like. A lot of date palms. I can picture camels and llamas here way back in the day. I just think the sign's significant. I think the word is too very similar, and I think it has something to do with it. All right. Well, we'll see. Oh, sorry, I didn't share the screen, guys. Sorry about that. My fault. I was sharing the screen. My fault, guys. I didn't want to just leave you like that. Erica. So here's the date palms. This is what Erica looks like. This is what I'm saying. Right there's like a lot of date palms. Arica, Africa, Arica. Big port town. So definitely a lot of trading and stuff going on in ancient times here. Or like I said, a deserty place. Just like so-called Egypt. Go back to it. All right. So Arica's a port now where they found hieroglyphics, right? Where Madame Blavatsky found hieroglyphics about 1851 or 1853 in which they note for those who can interpret them, the signs and the key to the secret entrance. Not far inland is a little river, the Paikina or Payakina, a name also given to a cerro in that region, right? Or a hill or a cliff, a prominent. All right, where were we? Sorry. Which remarks Madame Blavatsky is so named from the little waves which used to drift chispas of gold from the old lands of the Brazils. If that be so, the tunnel makers may be men of that same lost white Atlantean race. Gosh, the hijack, I told you. See what they do? Lost white Atlantean race? Come on, chill out, Robert Seffer, chill out. Just like Seffer, right? The mantle of whose high culture and science undoubtedly fell on old Peru. 80, high Brazil. Peru, high Brazil, vanished into the land of shades, leaving behind only a faint memory in wild South American Indian traditions. She says the Incas derived their gold from this little river, but of course, even so, it was merely one source of the supply. Actually, it must be said that no Latin American military or diplomatic map of the years 1840 to 1880 shows any rivulet, Paikina or Payakina, running into the Pacific near Arica. We found a few specks of gold and a handful of sand from this little river, the Payakina, which we broke back to Europe, says Madame Blavatsky, writing of a time somewhere between 1851 and 1853, when she is believed to have visited South America as well as Mexico. She is thought to have visited both lands twice, between 1851 and 1855. At the date when she visited Peru, she says the little river Payakina was the boundary between Peru and Bolivia. But here the mystic's memory must have been at fault. She's making up things. Madame Blavatsky went a little way inland toward the Cordillera of the Andes when she came in sight of three curiously formed separate peaks, a landmark especially as it seemed contrived by nature for some singular purpose of man. These peaks formed a very curious triangle behind ranges, the mighty Cordillera of the Andes, of which they are outposts. One mysterious Quichua, a neighboring village, whispered that only practicable entrance into the tremendous subterranean leading northward is somewhere cut like an adit into one of these queer peaks, yet lacking the secret of the landmarks, which can be unriddled only by those who can decipher the meaning of a certain row of hieroglyphics or inscriptions cut into the rocks and visible only when the sun's rays strike the cliff at a certain angle. A regiment of Titans equipped with tri or trinitro toluol or amatol high explosive or dynamite cartridges might even today rend the rocks in vain and then not unmask the mystery. There are, it may be mentioned here, spots along the canyon of the Rio Colorado where arrows cut deeply into the face of the sheer walls can be seen in certain lights and incidences of the solar rays. They are by rumors or roamers who go hunting treasure westward across the Gila Desert and unpeopled Gila, Gila Desert, thirst-stricken and heat-crazed Arizona, believed to be pointers toward ancient caches of unknown and extremely ancient races, and it may be are memorials of the unknown race whose buried temples, lofty stone pyramids, seven of them within a mile square, and massive granite rings and dwellings, circular walls, round venerable trees, and blocks of hieroglyphics speak of ruins of some very ancient Egypt or Phoenicia of the wild region of the head of the Gulf of California. All right, the Red Sea, the Gulf of California, that's the Red Sea. So it makes sense. You're finding ancient or so-called Phoenician regions here. A day's march from San Diego in 1850 when they were discovered. Yet even were someone to discover the hidden entrance into the subterranean and explore the vast bore until he came as far as the wall bounding that inner sepulchre of some long-dead Inca, king of the sun, he would still lack the open sesame to the treasure tomb itself. How would be caused the great slab to turn on its pivot? If he could not find the hidden mechanisms controlling the slab and tried to blast his way into the great tomb, the old unknown architect or architects have been before him at his like, almost exactly in the manner of the makers of the tombs of Thebes and Memphis along the hills of the dead, by the banks of the Nile of ancient Egypt. That's not ancient Egypt. Nile means great river. Mississippi means great river. And we have our own Memphis on this great river, Mississippi, who in their day, thousands of years ago, foresaw the ghoulish tomb robber for whom no pharaoh's ka was sacred, and who tore the jewels from the brow of the royally dead and smashed. Sorry. Sorry about that, guys. I had to cough. So elaborately painted mummy case in order to filch the ceremonial vessels of carved and chased gold and removed the sheets of pure gold swathed in the dead pharaoh, the Incas. All right, the dead pharaoh, the Incas, the dead pharaoh, the Incas, or the unknown architects anticipated the robber intruder. They have arranged the superincumbent rock so that, if force be applied, the mass will fall and bury sepulchres and content in common ruin. A mysterious Peruvian told Madame Blavatsky nearly a century ago, 1,000 soldiers, were they in that tunnel, would be forever one with the dead did they attempt to force their way into the treasure tomb of the dead Inca. There is no other access to the Arica chamber, Arica, but through that hidden door in the mountains near the Rio Paiquina, Arica. Along the entire length of the immense corridor from Bolivia to Lima and Royal Cusco are smaller hiding places filled with treasures of gold and gems and jewels that are the accumulations of many generations of Incas. The aggregate value of the treasures is beyond the power of man to estimate. A plan of this fantastic tunnel existed some years ago and probably still exists until the owner judges the time has come to put his plans to the proof. Meantime, in this book, I have given a remarkable and graphic chart based on my own secret information of this mystery. Vide the end paper. We had in our possession, said Madame Blavatsky, nearly 100 years ago, an accurate plan of the tunnel, the sepulchre, the great treasure chamber, and the hidden pivoted rock doors. It was given to us by the old Peruvian, but if we had ever thought of profiting by the secret, it would have required the cooperation of the Peruvian and Bolivian governments on an extensive scale. So you guys hear what Madame Blavatsky is doing all here. And she knew all this, right? And she's still talking about Egypt over there. Yeah. To say nothing of physical obstacles, no one individual or small party could undertake such an exploration without encountering the army of brigands and smugglers with which the coast is infested, in which in fact includes nearly the entire population. The mere task of purifying the fetid air of the tunnel not entered for centuries would also be its curious one. There the treasure lies, and tradition says it will lie till the last vestige of Spanish rule disappears from the whole of North and South America. Possibly that time is nearer at hand today, when the last vestiges of Spanish caste rule in the western states of Central and South America, the bureaucracies and cabinets of the gente decente, are being threatened by the rising parties and socializing movements representing the peones of old Mexico and the downtrodden landless, disinherited Quichua Indians of old Peru. All right, remember, he wrote this in 1940s, so that's what he's basing his modern times on. A word about this mysterious engineering of an antediluvian world is by no means out of place here. Again, we have the shadow of an old Atlantis, Shadow of Atlantis. We got a whole book called that, right? And by a different author. And High Brazil, projected into our own era. Tunnels and labyrinths have played a mysterious part in ancient civilizations and regions of what may wrongly be called the older world of Asia and Europe and Africa. Again, wrongly called the older world. Again, wrongly called. Why? Because America is the true old world, not a new world. Who can say what the ancient priest emperors of old Peru knew of or had inherited from these vanished civilizations which are not even a name or more than a faint and ghostly shadow? An ancient tradition of Brahmanic Hindustan speaks of a large island of unparalleled beauty, which in very ancient times lay in the middle of a vast sea in Central Asia, north of what is now the Himalayas. A race of Nephilim, or men of a golden age, lived in the island, but there was no communication between them and the mainland except through tunnels, radiating in all directions and many hundreds of miles long. These tunnels were said to have hidden entrances in old ruined cities in India, such as the ancient remains of Ellora, Elephanta, and the Ajunta caverns in the Chandori range. And the Ajunta caverns actually has a lot of depictions of what appears to people from America. Among the Mongolian tribes of Inner Mongolia, even today there are traditions about tunnels and subterranean worlds which sound as fantastic as anything in modern novels. One legend, if it be that, says that the tunnel leads to a subterranean world of antediluvian descent somewhere in a recess of Afghanistan or in the region of Hindu Kush. It is a Shangri-La where science and the arts, never threatened by world wars, develop peacefully among a race of vast knowledge. It is even given a name, Agarthy. The legend adds that a labyrinth of tunnels and underground passages is extended in a series of links connecting Agarthy with all other such subterranean worlds. Tibetan lamas even assert that in America it is not stated whether north, south, or central. There live in vast caves of an underworld, reached by secret tunnels, peoples of an ancient world, who thus escaped the tremendous cataclysm of thousands of years ago, both in Asia and America. These fantastic and ancient races are alleged to be governed by benevolent rulers or king archons. The subterranean world, it is said, is lit by a strange green luminescence which favors the growth of crops and conduces to length of days and health, all right? It has its own light, they're saying. Ferdinand Ossendowski and his beast Men and Gods, Edward Arnold from 1923, also mentions the strange kingdom of Agarthy, which he says he has been told by learned China lamas and Mongolian princes, has many men and tribes of incredibly ancient races, long banished from the kingdoms of day. He mentions of an old Brahmin of Nepal, who on a mystic pilgrimage met a fisherman apparently in the interior or on the coast of Siam or Thailand, or maybe another part of Indo-China, who ordered the Brahmin to take a place in a boat and obey the will of the gods by sailing with him on the sea to an Arabian Nights island where live people where live people having two tongues, which can separately speak different languages. He landed in the mysterious island, which Monsieur Osendowski does not say, might very well be located somewhere in the rock pinnacle in coral-studded China Sea, a region shunned and unexplored today, off the main steam lanes and not even charted by the Admiralty, who advised navigators to stick to the well-known sea lanes. But wherever it might be, these strange islanders showed the old llama, a bird with teeth that caught sea fish, and an unknown animal with 16 feet and one eye. The islanders said, "We come out of the subterranean kingdom, where in cars of type unknown to Western races, men rush through the subterranean world, through cleavages and the earth." Clearly, this story is of the believe it or not type, but it would be wisdom not to dismiss the story as pure fantasy. There is no smoke without fire, nor are all the Eastern wandering mystics necessarily romancers of the Baron von Munchausen type, nor men whose imaginations have been overstrongly impressed by the fantasy, and most certainly novels of H.G. Wells of a more youthful day. I say gently again, reader, remember the Komodo dragon, and I could also add of my own curious knowledge the strange parchment shards of the China Sea of the year 1669, left by Captain William Kidd, the pirate privateer. Huh? Is he a Sephardic Moorish brother? Whose originals are now in a house in Sussex. For what purposes, however, were these amazingly long tunnels of old Peru intended? What mysterious codes did they serve? Quien sabe, señores? Who knows? Gentlemen. A startling clue gained in a very peculiar and romantic manner to one of the purposes of these mysterious tunnels, and which is directly concerned with the mysterious stone city in the Lancandones territory, of which I have written elsewhere, came in the course of a chance talk between a very old Peruvian, a Quichua Indian, and the same well-known mystic and American woman traveler, the late Madame Helena P. Blavatsky, who, as one sees, was journeying through the mountains of Peru in 1851 or 1853. The old Peruvian had passed all his life vainly trying to conceal his hatred toward the official Peruvians and the Spanish conquerors. He called them brigands. "I keep friends with them, these bandidos," he said, "and their Catholic missioners, for the sake of my own people. But I am much a worshipper of the sun, as if I had lived in the days of our murdered emperor." All right? Did they really mean the sun? The Inca Atahualpa. Now as a coveted native and missionary, I once took a journey to Santa Cruz del Quiché. One second. In western Guatemala, right? The Quiché, Quichua, right? Quichua, right? They speak in Peru, and then you got the Quiché, Quichua, Quiché. And when there, I went to see some of my people by a subterranean passage leading into a mysterious city behind the Cordilleras. Herein it is death for any white man to trespass, or European, said Madame Blavatsky. We believe his story, as it is corroborated elsewhere by Stevens in his travels. Besides, a man who is about to die will rarely stop to invent idle stories. All right, we're gonna get into the travels of Stevens in Central America, Mexico. Similar strange tunnels of incredibly ancient date and unknown origin in the West Indies were brought to the attention of Christopher Columbus when he visited Martinique. No doubt, no doubt, the Atlantean race, he's trying to put white, the Atlantean race built splendid cities in what are now West Indian islands, but which at the far off date may have formed part of the now submerged Middle American continent, whose name, all right, American, it was part of America, the parts that went down, because the rest of the parts, we're still here, we're still up, of Atlantis, whose name is commemorated in the word Antilles. Remember, Antilles was literally a map of the island of Antilles, was literally from the Mississippi to the east coast of North America. It's literally depicting that. Remember, guys? All right, let me just show you that again. Come on, Kurimeo, not again. Come on, Kurimeo, hurry up. All right. All right. So this is the cover of a book we read, Atlantis, Dwelling Place of the Gods, right? So this is literally, guys, this is literally what the Antilles Island looks like on old maps, you know, off the coast of Ireland and England and all these places in Europe. This is what it depicts Antilles looking like. So what the author did is literally show that it's literally depicting from the Mississippi River up to the Susquehanna River down to the coast, the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast of Mexico, right? It's literally Florida sticking out. You got Galveston and Texas over here, Louisiana. You got the bays, Chesapeake Bay and all that. It all matches. It all matches, right? So what we mean Antilles? Nah. Yeah, that might be a reference to Antilles people, Atlantean people, and not literally ant, right? Not literally, or just underground, or just mound builders, because we mimicked ants building mounds, right? But yeah, people did live underground for a long time, and what's we reading today, guys, right? These tunnels, these underground tunnels, right? These are real. Shout out again. I saw the archivist earlier here. He found a lot of newspaper articles where they're reporting all these ancient tunnels they're finding, in these old newspaper reports, right? So, I mean, it's corroborating. So, the word Antilles. A curious tradition of the old world of Asia is that old Atlantis had a network of labyrinthine tunnels and passages running in all directions. In the day when the land bridge between the drowned land and Africa on one side and old Brazil on the other still existed. All right. This is them still trying to put it in the middle. They're still trying to put Atlantis only in the Atlantic Ocean. In Atlantis, the tunnels were used for necromantic and black magic cults. Really? How does he know that? Anyway, it is curious that the Caribs in 1493 told Columbus that in the old kingdom of the Amazon, women warriors anciently existed in Mandanino, which is Martinique. We've got this drop before. We've read the primary source where Columbus said he found Amazonian warrior women in Martinique wearing breastplates, had shields and swords and everything. Yes, he said that. There were great subterraneans, and when the women were likely to be pestered out of due season of love orgasms and rotting by periodical cannibal lovers, the women went down to the great tunnels and hid themselves. If the lovers not to be put off still followed them, their ardent passions were cooled with showers of well-aimed arrows from Amazon bows, and many a cannibal bill was brought to an untimely grave. In this way, by the fierce Venuses of old Martinique, by the old Amazonian warrior women of Martinique Island. Fuentes, who lived about AD 1689 and wrote an unpublished manuscript history of Guatemala, speaks of the amazingly large and ancient towns inhabited by an unknown and long vanished race found there by the conquistadores. He says, the marvelous structure of the tunnels subterranean of the pueblo of Punchuta, being of the most firm and solid cement, runs and continues through the interior of the land, all right, interior and tunnel for the prolonged distance of 9 leagues to the pueblo of Tecpan, Guatemala. It is a proof of the power of these ancient kings and their vassals. All right, we got a primary source from 1689 telling you that he had a long tunnel from one archaeological zone in Guatemala to another pyramid city, right? Like another ruined city. He gives no hint of the uses to which these amazing tunnels, more than 30 miles long on the basis of the old Castilian League, were put by these ancient races of old America. He gives no hint. Sorry, it may be true that the great tunnel of the Incas had a branch underground way leading under the forest eastward of Cusco, in the very direction taken by Inca Tupac Amaru, his army, and his host of camp-following refugees in the late 16th century. Maybe the fleeing Peruvians vanished into these mysterious tunnels and left only the whispering leaves of the trees of the dense green forest as mute witnesses of their secret exits. The Inca fled to the mysterious White House of the elusive South American empire of Gran Paitite, Paitite, about which I shall write in another book. I think we read that. It is evident that the men of this mysterious land of Paitite must have had contacts with the Incas long before the Spanish conquistadors overran the Peruvian Empire. At intervals of about 40 years, the last being in 1942, there come rumors about the existence of men of a lost Mayan or Aztec race who fled before the faces of horses of Don Hernando Cortes' cavalry. From time to time, strange elusive Indians appear in the marketplaces of lonely frontier pueblos in the provinces of Chiapas and western Guatemala. They contact only with Indians, barter goods, and vanish as suddenly as they come, no Mexican or Guatemalan official being any the wiser. They are emissaries from a lost city of the ancient, civilized race that once governed old Mexico. No European man has ever penetrated the region of this wilderness, where it is rumored these lost world men live as did their fathers, erect or maintain the same majestic stone buildings, palaces, and temples, large courts, and lofty towers with high terraces of stone staircases, and are still carving in stone the mysterious hieroglyphics that no modern scholar can decipher in the ruins of old Yucatan. At intervals of half a century, the story is revived. It was first told to the American traveler, J. Lloyd Stevens, traveler mentioned above by Madame Blavatsky, by a Spanish priest he met at Chayol or Chayul, a pueblo in western Guatemala, in 1838 1839. The priest swore to Stevens that he had seen with his own eyes a mysterious lost city, and so earnest was the old priest's manner that Stevens believed him, said Stevens in London and New York in 1839. The padre of the little village near the ruins of Santa Cruz del Quiche had heard of this unknown city when he was in the village of Chayul. Chayul lies in the mountains in western Guatemala, close to the headwaters of the Rio Usumacinta. The priest was then a young man, and with much labor climbed to the naked summit of the topmost ridge of the Sierra of the Cordillera. When arrived at the height of 10 or 12,000 feet, he looked over an immense plain extending to Yucatan and the Gulf of Mexico. At a great distance, he saw a large city spread over a great space, and with turrets, white and glistening in the sun. Tradition says no European man has ever reached the city, that the inhabitants speak the Maya language, know that strangers conquered their whole land and murder any European man who attempts to enter their territory. They have no coin, no horses, no cattle, no mules, or other domestic animals, except fowl and the cocks they keep underground to prevent the crowing being heard. One may parenthetically point out that it was down this mysterious river, Rio Usumacinta, marked on the most recent War Department maps of the U.S. Army, unknown as to the greater part of its tortuous course and cut up by gorges and hilly jungle, that Wudan or Votan, the Phoenician, right? Votan, Wudan, Votan, Pakal, Votan, Pakal, Votan, Wodan is the same. Yes, guys, Phoenician traveled, right? You've seen it in reverse. This is Phoenicia, the Canaan, traveled to the splendid stone cities of Palenque, Uxmal, Copan, and the mysterious stone city visited by the old Peruvian sun priest. In the 19th century, AD, of course, in Botan's far and legendary day, these cities hummed with life and high civilization, being far from dead or lost. It is also known to the bush Indians that on a bluff over this Rio Usumacinta, in the mount tomb of Guate Motzin, last prince of Aztecs, whose body with regalia and much treasure was taken there and buried by sallow-faced Aztecan priests in Cortes' days, any greaser or gringo seeking to cut into this royal huaca is sure of warm attentions from the bush Indians and the dangerous and dwarfish white Lacandones. Huh? What white Lacandones? Who must be survivors of a once highly ancient civilized race of all Central America, right? So I like to see what he's talking about. The learned Americanist and scholar Abby Charles Etienne, Brasseur de Bourbourg, when he was ecclesiastical administrator in the Mexican frontier state of Chiapas, about 1858, heard the story again with the addition that men of this lost stone city suddenly appeared and vanished in frontier pueblos and townships, where they came to barter an English filibuster. The filibusters' future video on them, how they tried to invade Central America and become presidents. They did that in Costa Rica. They tried and they failed. We kicked them out. Future video. So this English filibuster and adventurer claims he heard a similar story in 1935. In March 1942, President Roosevelt invited to the White House two Californians named Lamb, husband and wife, who seemed to have made contact in the bush of Chiapas with a degenerate tribe of Lancandones or other Indians who are hereditary guardians of a lost Mayan city, wherein a temple containing on gold plates the hieroglyphical history of the race and the world, and predicting it is said Great War Number Two. One gathers the lambs were not allowed to see this lost city, which lies behind a pass in high mountains. Maybe there is more than one lost or dead city in this dense and unexplored jungle territory. According to the lambs, the degenerate Indians go to the lost or hidden city to worship in its Mayan temple on certain days, and they told them of the great things of the old ones, written on sheets of solid gold, and telling of a great deluge, written on gold. You mean like you mean like the Mormon tablets they found, written in gold in New York in a tunnel with Micmac writing, where it looked Egyptian? Yeah, and also like the sheets of gold Father Crespi found, and all these other golden tablets, right? The story above is derived from a West Country evening newspaper extract cabled from a New York daily newspaper in summer of 1940. But I may add that English engineer, whom I have mentioned in another part of this book as having spent many years of his life in both Mexico and the Argentine, and who died in Gloucester Royal Infirmary in 1938, told me that in the state of Jalisco, somewhere in the little known southern extension of the Great Range of the Sierra Madre, about 121 kilometers, about 75 miles east of the Cabo de Corrientes, are prehistoric ruins known to the Indian peones. The region is one of that is never visited by Mexican unless in times of insurrection when a band of revolucionarios has sought to escape the government through by fleeing to the recesses of the savage mountains. Jalisco is, of course, a province well known as one of the centers of the Aztec race, just as is the valley of Anahuac, Anahuac, Anahuacan, Anunakin, Anahuacan, Anunakin, Anunakin, Anahuacan in the territory around the capital. All right, so guys, we only got a couple pages left, right? Don't go nowhere. We're almost done. Just for the dismount, the Aztecos Indians in Jalisco state say that these ancient ruins were once the home of a people who were civilized and benevolent, whether they were of the Mayan race or some even more ancient people with Atlantean connections derived from the high Brazilian pioneer and civilizer gets a quote. Plum serpent, we talking about Jehoshua? Only exploration by competent field workers can decide. The dead city lies on a mesa plateau, and from it, at certain hours of the day or at dawn, comes the sound of an eerie, vibrant drumming. The sound is heard from afar, even on the Pacific. The Indians declare that the drumming emanates from los espíritus, or ghosts, and comes from the stone walls of a great temple where they once was worshipped, the ruler of the universe. One day, say the Indians, the wheel of life or cycle of events will come full circle, and the ancient people, all right, the ancient people will return and reintroduce a golden age. Come on now. You will return. Hosea 3 and 5. You will return and seek King David and Hawa. And you have reintroduced a golden age. The Amaru Khans, the ancients of ancients, will return. As one has seen, millennial prophecies of this kind are common all over the regions where the Atlantean, Central, and South American Empire once held sway. And guys, believe it or not, this is part of it. We are returning. Yeah, I say we, like the French. The dead city is said to be of a stone and massively and enduringly built. Ruins of cyclopean walls surround it. On a hill above the mesa is another city of the dead, which seems to be a necropolis of the princes of archons of this ancient race. It is said that pyramidal structures stand on the tops of great mounds, made by man and not nature, and as in Yucatan and Guatemala, are shrouded in jungle and trees. Great blocks of pavement led towards the dead city, in whose vaults treasures or records are concealed, watched by mystic guardians, whose from whom the drumming emanates. Needless to say, no Aztecos will venture into this region. It is clearly of the sort described by Mr. Masefield in Starred Parker, a place whose gods do not wish it to be known. Ruins of dead cities, not yet reached by archaeologists, also exist. One has been told in Mexico, on the borders of the state of Tehuantepec. In this state, there is said by Mexicans to exist today a community of dancing matriarchs, as this is the very region wherein, as I shall speak on in a book to follow this, where those very Amazon women, of whom a certain Castilian don wrote to Caesar Carlos, the Caesar Carlos the Fifth, the Holy Roman Black Man Emperor, King of Old Spain, it probably in ancient days had Atlantean connections, since the Amazons of the old world of he's trying to make the Amazons from Africa and Europe and not from here. I read that chapter, guys. It was a 4-hour video. We read his other book, Secret Cities of South America, right? We're still reading it. We're not done with it. All right? And we dodged the hijack when he kept adding that stuff. But he got to a major drop at the end of that chapter. He's letting you know who the real Amazon historical ones. They were coming from here. So-called Atlantis. More than once fought with Atlanteans, if not in the island continent, certainly in a submerged northwest African colony, which Diodorus, citing vanished Carthaginian records, said had been submerged by the cataclysm long before his day. Again, didn't we read about the Cartagena de las Indias yesterday? Carthaginian of the Carthaginian of the Indies? That's the original one. Here again, this oaja or mysterious drumming is heard coming afar over the environing jungle and ranges. One such dead city stands on a mesa girdled by cliffs. The region is covered with shrouded pyramids, to which lead ancient roadways of massive paved blocks and vaults of this dead city. The Indians of Chiapas say they are hidden and guarded by the ghosts of Mayan priest rulers. Books written on gold leaves, just like the Book of Mormon, the ancient Book of Mormon, or what they found, right? What they found there in that cave written by the Mi'kmaq. Gold leaves recording the history of ancient things and races of antediluvian or later Mayan times. Competent exploration is, of course, necessary before these riddles can be solved. Farther south in the unknown mountain wilderness of southwestern Darien, today there is told of the forest Indians a similar story of a stone city in the mountains wherein tremendous treasures are hidden and priests perform sacrifices. It may be identical with the city sought by the Castilian soldiers under Vasco Núñez de Balboa. Old legend says the stone city called Dahiba had a secret subterranean temple at the bottom of a cavern where strange rites the underworld were performed of the underworld. No smoke without fire in these legends of mysterious America. A native whisper in Darien says these rites are by no means extinct, nor the subterraneans today. In the mountains of modern Ecuador and in Colombia, the traveler encounters the same whispered stories about islands in the middle of wooded mountain tarns, to which access is gained on a certain day of the year through a secret tunnel known only to the Indians, often speaking a tongue which they will allow no others to learn. And these sanctuaries are also said to be wonderful treasures of gold and jewels, and sacred vessels or gemmed insignia of some cult of the moon goddess Chia, or of Inti, our Lord, the Inca's son. And on that one day of the year, the Indians, good Catholics to all appearance, on the others, worship their old goddess or gods. Always the hunters, whether or no gringos or greasers, have come up all standing against enigmatic towering cliffs with no signs of a fissure or old rifts in the sides of some old lone cordillera, where, say the informants, there existed in the days just before the hoofs of the horses of Don Hernando Cortez' Castilian Caballeria, or Don Francisco Pizarro's conquistadores, clattered over the passes of the Sierras and the Cordilleras on the ruin of old Mexico, Tenochtitlan, Enoch, Titlan, and old Cusco, city of David, entrances to amazing tunnels and labyrinths. Today, in the wilds of South America, when you encounter these mysteries of the mountains, and with a good pair of binoculars, pick out what looks like signs of ancient carvings or hieroglyphic inscriptions sunk in the weathered rock, your guide shrugs his shoulders and does not even attempt to repeat the parrot talk about the Incas knowing nothing of writing before the Spaniards came. You guys hear that? You may ask him if any native has the key to those strange signs cut yonder in the wall of the cliff. What do they mean? Who carved them? And when and why? So of course these people don't know, right? These tour guides, like gatekeepers, right? They're indoctrinated to be gatekeepers and they don't even know that. He looks up into the gloomy sky with dark impatient face, and from his subdued eyes comes a smoldering fire overlaid and damped down by a long-standing grief of a conquered ancient nation. Quien sabe, señor? Who knows, sir? They are long ago dead. Who knew? And what they knew was more than those bandoleros odiosos of Pizarro ever dreamt. Banderistas, bandoleros, right? These guys we read about earlier, enslaving the Indians. No one can read those signs today. No, none ever will. None ever will. How do you know? Nevertheless, one needs not to be too certain that no one today among these sad-faced Quichua Indians has any knowledge of these secrets of a very ancient race. The face and the mind of the soft-spoken men of the low-pitched voices whose mules and llamas and burros pick their way so quietly through the hushed, narrow streets of old Cusco with no streetcars and hardly any modern traffic is not an open book for any foreigner or modern descendant of Spanish Creole to read. People who have lived for any time in Central America or Peru, Yucatan, Guatemala, Chiapas, or Ecuador suspect that these ancient tunnels and mysterious caves are still today, in 1945, in his time, playing their secret part in the hidden life of the modern descendants of these ancient races, right? So these modern, what they, people that are got in reservations calling Indians, they don't know anything about this stuff. The secret rites and memories of the old man god, Quetzalcoatl, the plum serpent, the Dracan of the Toltecs, not Aztecs. Again, Aztec came much later, invaders just like Inca. That's what I mean. These people don't really know, in 1940s that they're generalizing. Murdered Emperor Moctezuma and Inti, the sun god of the assassinated Inca Atahualpa, die hard as Botan of the Quiches of old Yucatan. Indeed, this question is forced on the attention of the thoughtful guests of these countries. Is there today, as in the past, some mysterious central organization of a native theocratic character existing in the Peruvian montaña, or behind the Central American Cordilleras, which still keeps in touch with the downtrodden Indians, giving them orders, keeping alive the flame of old culture and race, preserving sacerdotal cults and magical rites among men who, though nominally Christianos and good Catholics and good subjects of Mexico or Peru, are yet not quite what they seem? Even today, Nahualism, or the worship of Montezma or Quetzalcoatl, is still practiced in subterranean vaults and secret and very ancient caves and tunnels by both peones and in some cases men of old Spanish descent who live in remote pueblos of old Mexico, Yucatan, or over the border in Honduras and Guatemala. Nor can the Roman Catholic Church stop or even trail it. People who have never lived in these lands and who derive their ideas of them from films or travel books, by no means always written by devout worshippers of George Washingtonian ideal of truth at any cost, whether self-advertising or not, or even from the orthodox professors and unteachable academicians, too often blind leaders of the blind, all right? Blind leaders of the blind may smile at these fantasies, yet the fact remains that the authorities such as Dr. J.J. von Tschudi, the Peruvian historian, and the famous American William Hicklin Prescott, right? The books of Prescott are really good. We're going to get into those. Believed in the existence of an organization of this secret sort about the middle of the 19th century. A bold or ignorant man would be he who asserted that no such secret native organization or of a native theocratic character exists today, either in Western South America or old modern Mexico or Guatemala. If early Christians in old Rome had their catacombs and their passwords, why may not this much more ancient world of South and Central America possess its mysterious tunnels and amazing labyrinths, which put in the shade any catacomb or maze existent in any time, from old Thebes and the Minotaur of Minos to those of the Lamas of the mystic land of old and modern Tibet. Wow. And guys, that's the end of this chapter. Hope you guys enjoyed the reading. Yeah, I just read about 30 pages. Yeah, mouth is dry. Let me get some water. Water. Hey guys, really appreciate you guys, sticking around. I know a lot of you were here from the beginning, sticking around. I appreciate everybody who rewatches later on, takes the time to hear me out. If you're interested in this stuff, it must be in your blood. You must be one of these ancient people they're talking about. All right, this mysterious light, these temples, these underground tunnels hidden in the forest. I mean, we've heard these things, right? We know about these things, right? Let me see what I can go out here with. Yeah. Thank you guys for sticking around. Hope you guys enjoyed the reading. Definitely I think they got one more chapter in this book that seems pretty interesting. We're gonna get through. So thanks for sticking around at this chapter. We'll probably come back to this book in another time and finish up that other chapter. Much love and respect to all of you for all the support, all the love, all this that you give me. Appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed the reading. I thought it was interesting. I didn't read this whole chapter ever before, so the first time I'm reading it completely. So I'm glad I'm able to read that with you. All right. And regarding the strange eternal light, it's actually very famous. There's a lot of stories on it. This actually matches a lot of the stories of the legends of Acador or Acacor. Remember? Acacor in Brazil. The underground temple and all that, with tunnels connecting all over. I mean, it matches all these stories. There's so many people with the same stories, guys, that it can't just be a myth, a fable, a legend. It has to be somewhat true in some way. And we already know, they've found so many tunnels, But yeah, very interesting, right? Very interesting. America is the true old world. This is part of Atlantis. This is the true terrestrial paradise. This is the Holy Land. This is the first land out of the waters. I mean, we got the signs. We've shown all this, guys. We've shown this. We've shown all this, right? And that's why we're going to keep finding and reading about these discoveries, because they've never told us. They never cared to look. They've left us all hidden. They let it just become ruins and let the jungle overtake all these ruins and all these cities and tunnels and all that, which we're about to find out, right? They're gonna find all these things soon. This is gonna become mainstream, all right? Maybe. I believe it is. Maybe not all of it, because I don't think we'll ever find everything, because there's so much. The earth is big, right? And there's so much ways you can go, and so many remote regions on the earth where you can find so many probably things underneath the canopy or forest or whatever underground. So anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Pura vida, mi gente. Pura vida, mi gente. Oh, wow. We're gonna go out with DIY DIY, do it yourself. This is from Robin Dre Beats. Robin Dre Beats, much love, much love.
Robin Dre, trust me, bye.